Kevin Myers, good morning to you.
Good morning,
Thank you
Sean.
for coming in. We'll come back to those questions I posed in the billboard in a few minutes. How did you hear that you were being dispatched by the Sunday Times?
Well, I heard, I think, after everybody else had heard, because it was on the BBC News on Sunday morning, and I hadn't been told. I didn't learn until early afternoon that I got a text message from London where the decision was taken. It wasn't taken in Ireland, and I rang London as requested, and I was told that my services were being dispensed with.
By whom?
I actually don't know the name of the man. Craig something or other. He said, look, I do apologise. We've never spoken before, but this is where we part company, and you won't be writing for us again.
What was your reaction to that?
I got a phone call from my one of my editors in Dublin on Sunday morning that there had been an online uproar over my column. So he was surprised by it, and I was surprised by it. But the uproar, the scale of the uproar online indicated that something grave had occurred, and it developed very rapidly then. And it developed in London. I don't think the people in Dublin really were aware of the gravity until it was all over.
Now, questions are being asked, Kevin, about how that column got through with carrying the amount of offence that it caused to people of the Jewish faith. I mean, just tell me how it would normally operate.
Do you know what? Enough misery has been caused within my own life and within people within the Jewish community in not misery in Ireland, because the people in the Jewish community in Ireland have been very supportive, but genuine irritation and anger amongst the Jewish community in London and elsewhere. For me not want to add to the general level of unhappiness by blaming other people for what happened. I am the author of that article. I am the author of my own misfortunes. I am the master of my soul, and I must answer for what I have done. But I don't think it right or proper for me to start saying that somehow or other people are responsible for what happened. I must do nothing that will bring ruin or unhappiness to other people.
And that's fair and honourable and noble, but I think there is an interest, though, in how a column gets into a paper. I mean, how many people would have read it once you had submitted it to the paper?
I would guess 5, 6, some in Ireland and some in London. But as I said, I mean, people in any walk of life, in your walk of life and in mine, nod. You know, the Homer nods and everyone nods, and just on this particular day, Friday, Saturday, a number of people nodded on duty and let something through that shouldn't have got through, and it did get through. But I am the author of this.
Sure, and you accept, or do you accept, that what you wrote should not have been written?
I do. I have many flaws. One of my flaws is to deal with major issues in throwaway lines. And I did that with regard to the two women whom I identified within the BBC hierarchy who were particularly well rewarded. Now, I have to, my Jewish audience will understand me. I'm a great admirer of the Jewish people. I think they are the most gifted people that has ever existed on this planet, and civilization owes an enormous debt to them. And one of the great qualities about the Jewish people is their sense of dignity and their sense of self-worth. And the only way that can be properly expressed in the world of celebrity is getting the right financial package. You don't know how long celebrity is going to last. So I foolishly refer to their religion as being a motivator. No, I actually think there's a good an article to be had about that, but it's not to be done in a throwaway line. That will not be understood. But I didn't think about it because I often don't think. The throwaway line is so often my pitfall, my downfall.
Not to trivialise it or anything, but I met somebody yesterday who said, look, you know, what's all the fuss about? I mean, would they fire Shakespeare? He wrote The Merchant of Venice.
Yes.
But that was 500 years ago. And this was personalised around two individual
It wasn't personalised in that sense, Sean, because it was said it was intended out of respect. Now, as it happens, I wrote that knowing that I was going to meet Rabbi Julian Neuberger in West Cork, in Skibbereen, on Sunday. We're going to be on the same panel. And I thought I could have a nice little joke with her about it. I was so unaware of what I was doing. This is my stupidity. And she hadn't seen the article. I told her about it, that I said I was in trouble at lunchtime. I feared the worst. And I told her what I'd said. And she said, "That's wrong, Kevin. You shouldn't have said that."
And she said...
Yes, go on.
On the News at One, to quote from her yesterday, "I was offended by his association of Jews being rich and good at doing deals." She said as well, though she likes you and admires your defence of the war graves of the Irish who fought in the First World War, but she said it was rubbish what he wrote. If you use that old caricature, you are being anti-Semitic.
Yes, that's not what the Council of Jews, a representative body of Jews in Ireland, said. They didn't say I was anti-Semitic. They said they didn't like the terminology, and I accept that. I know that I'm not anti-Semitic. Now, I might have sounded anti-Semitic, and I'm sorry that Julie thought of that I was being anti-Semitic. She didn't say I was anti-Semitic when we were talking on Sunday, but I accept that was the
She
perception.
hadn't read the article, I think, at that stage. She would have...
It was only my version of it.
Yes.
I just gave you the paragraph that I knew would cause problems.
Yes, and when she said that you need to get some education, do you see any merit in that?
There's always there's a merit for education for everybody, and I certainly can always benefit from education. I've just told you that I have got serious professional flaws. I'm not sure that anyone's going to see those professional flaws in the future because I'm not sure that I have a career in which to show them.
I know you don't want to bring derision or put anybody's position in jeopardy, but did any of those people who would have read the article, did any of them come back to you with queries and say, "Kevin, are you sure about this?" Or did it just go through?
Essentially, it went through, and that's because people... Look, in this side of the Irish Sea, where there's very little actual anti-Semitism, it's just not within our framework. We don't think of people as being different because they're Jews. And there is a very warm tradition of esteem for Jews. We just don't have the antennae, but there is a powerful... concern in London about anti-Semitism. And you know, one of the things I didn't put into my computer navigation system is that Jews across the world and in Europe have the Holocaust as a recent memory. And now in every synagogue in London and in France and in Belgium, there's armed guards outside their synagogues. They have a sensitivity which I had forgotten about, and I shouldn't have forgotten about. That's entirely my fault.
Were they right to fire you?
Yeah, I think so. In that sense, because of the esteem that... esteem is the wrong word. Because of the impossible situation they were placed in. The manner in which I was disposed of was, I think, wrong. I think it could have been done more gently, and I think I could have been treated with more dignity. But I do understand. I too quickly said an affirmative to a question I wasn't expecting. I said yes. And I don't think that's quite right, because anyone should have a second chance for making an error of judgment. And I made an error of judgment. You see, I've come on air and I'm not fully prepared for what you're going to throw at me. I haven't slept in 2 nights. And I'm I'm
It's
distressed.
a very tough thing. And you know, on a human level, I think people will empathise or sympathise with somebody losing. You've lost your livelihood.
Yes, I have. But I don't want anyone else to lose their livelihood. Enough damage has been done. So, it's happened. I enjoyed working for the Sunday Times, and I'm sorry this has happened. What the Sunday Times...
But I mean, if there are... and again, that's noble of you to say, but if there are 5 or 6 people whose job it was to vet what people write for the paper prior to its going into print, surely they have to be on the line as well. They've got to have their backside in the bacon.
Enough damage, enough misery has been caused. Now, you see, you can have a purge.
Yeah.
You can, and a lot of people would love a purge, and a nice big witch hunt, lots of victims, lots of lives ruined, lots of mortgages not being paid.
It's called taking responsibility.
I'm taking responsibility for what I wrote. I can't do anything for anybody else.
Okay, and the other thing that's been much noted and much commented upon is that if there hadn't been those references to the two women presenters in the BBC, Claudia Winkleman and Vanessa Feltz, you would still be a columnist. And questions are being asked.
And you know that was just one single, a line or two, that's all.
Yeah, but the question is being asked as well, though. I mean, what about the way you would appear to routinely write material which is misogynistic,
it's not
which
misogynistic.
would be very offensive to women?
I am a critic of political feminism. I am not a misogynist, and that's a term that you might have been. I don't think you would have used that term about me in different circumstances, Sean. It hasn't routinely been used about me, but it's a simple way of labelling somebody, and that means you don't have to listen to what they're saying.
But in terms of why people get ahead professionally and why men more so than women do so, you suggest that a personnel department, or a human resources department as it's now called, will tell you that men usually work harder, get sick less frequently and seldom get pregnant. But most of all, men tend to be more ambitious. They have that greyback testosterone powered hierarchy climbing ID that feminised and egalitarian obsessed legislatures are increasingly trying to legislate against.
Yes, well, that's an observation I would have made on many occasions, and I don't think it would have been the object of such obloquy in different circumstances. But I do believe that men and women behave very differently, and men are driven by ambition and by urges that women don't have, generally speaking.
But when you wrote as well in the same column on Sunday, a fairly average female columnist in 800 indignant words of smouldering mediocrity will, without leaving her keyboard, earn more than a cleaning lady or a checkout girl will ever do in an entire week, plus Sunday overtime. Now, I mean, why refer to a fairly average female columnist there?
Actually, because we're talking about in the context of equality. I don't believe in equality, Sean. I'm not asking you questions. You're asking me questions. I'm on this programme because Mary, your producer, texted me this morning, and she's doing her professional job outside. None of us is equal to one another. I'm arguing repeatedly over the decades.
But why put in the word, if you just wrote a fairly average columnist in 800 indignant words, I mean, why does it have to be a female columnist?
Because I'm talking about the issue of female equality. When feminists talk about, within the BBC, talking about how they should be equal with the men, well, actually, no, nobody's equal. So the woman who's making the tea or cleaning the floors or whatever is not equal to the star presenter, and that was the issue, the context of that.
That applies equally to male.
It does, absolutely.
Male as well as female.
You can actually, Sean, without any problem, go through line by line and paragraph by paragraph in that thing and find fault with it.
Okay, but I want to do one more, actually, if I may, and I don't labour the point. But you say equality is a unicorn. Don't wait for it or look for favours because of your chromosome count. Get what you can with whatever talents you have, and ask yourself, how many women are billionaires, chess grandmasters, mathematicians? There's a connection. Mastery of money usually requires singular drive, ruthless logic and instant Arctic cold arithmetic. Now, it's very easy to conclude, reading that paragraph, or most of a paragraph, that you actually believe that women are inferior to men.
No, well, you might have come to that conclusion. If I thought that, I would be an idiot. And I'm sorry I've given that impression, but I've already told you that I have many weaknesses, and one of my weaknesses is a weakness for facile terminology like that. If it irritates people, then you're losing them. You lose them as readers or listeners or whatever. Now, the way you've read that out to me and to your audience makes me sound like a very unpleasant person. But I'm not a very unpleasant person. You just take any single paragraph of... by
the way, it is the duty of a columnist, I would argue, and I'm sure you as well, occasionally to be unpleasant.
Yeah, it is, but the point is that a single paragraph taken like that out of context makes me sound like a villain. But there are very few women mathematicians. There are very few women grand chess masters. There's one in the top 100.
Maybe they have better things to be doing.
Well, that's the point. That is the point. Now, if I'd said that, that would be called misogyny.
There's a lot of, needless to say, a lot of traffic on our text line. Does Mr. Myers, and this is going back some time, does Mr. Myers apologise for calling the children of single mothers bastards?
Well, I don't know why she's asking that. The woman's asking that. I wrote an entire column on that. An entire column. That column appeared on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I had written and a full retraction and a full and abject apology, which the term abject and contrite were the two words I used at the end. I knew I had done a bad thing.
Ruth Walsh, and I'm not sure if this is our former journalistic colleague Ruth Walsh, but anyway, is tweeting to observe Kevin Myers on a personal level is very likeable. However, he has made too many throwaway remarks over the years. He is not a rookie journalist.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, how do you go about rebuilding, or do you at this stage?
Very hard to say how I can recover from this. I mean, personally, I'm in a very bad way, which is fine. People expect, you to suffer if they give you a good kicking, and that's happening. But I'm not sure if there's any redemption for me now, which will give a lot of people satisfaction.
And I suppose if they read the Independent today, Gerard O'Regan, their former editor, is writing about, I think, how unnecessarily difficult it was for him as an editor to deal with you. I mean, I suppose brilliant people oftentimes are very difficult to deal with. But I suppose, it could be suggested that you long ago burned your bridges in the Irish Times, then the Independent, and now the Sunday Times.
I didn't burn my bridges in the Irish Times. I left the Irish Times. The Irish Times didn't ask me to leave, and they actually tried very hard for me to stay. So the Irish Independent chose not to renew my contract when it was up, but there was no ill feeling there. It didn't happen, and the Sunday Times took me on. We now know that the Sunday Times relationship is over.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think there's any point in trying to argue your way back in there by maybe writing a fresh column, or would you like to be given space to write 750 or 1,000 words just to state your position, not necessarily pleading for your job back, but... Well,
there's no question the Sunday Times are taking me on, as far as I can see. Martin Ivins, the editor, I am told, and I haven't been reading the stuff online because I haven't got the constitution to take all the hatred that exists online, said that I will never be employed by the Sunday Times in any guise in the future, so I have to accept him on his word.
In your defence, I mean, there is the statement issued by Maurice Cohen, chair of the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland, in which he says branding Kevin Myers as either an anti-Semite or a Holocaust denier is an absolute distortion of the facts. But he does go on, I think, to take issue with what you wrote.
All the Jews have, and I accept that. I was wrong. It was stupid of me to this encapsulation of a quite big issue in a single sentence or half a sentence. It's done me terminal damage, but that's that. It's what happens in life these days.
Would there have been a sense, though, that you might have been subconsciously or otherwise saying, look, I can toss out these lines, these observations, and sure, look, there's half a dozen people to rein me in if I go overboard, and it's I can push the boundaries and push the boundaries.
I am the master of my soul and the author of my own misfortunes, Sean. I cannot blame anybody else.
What would you say to Vanessa Feltz this morning? What would you say to Claudia
I
Winkleman?
am very, very sorry that I really mean this, because I'm not rescuing anything. It's over for me professionally as far as I can see. I'm very, very sorry that I should have so offended them, and I do utter an apology, not for any reason other than out of genuine contrition for what the hurt I'd caused them. But I uttered those words out of respect for the religion from which they come, and for the religion that I still hold in high regard, particularly the Irish members of that religion who have been so forthright in their defence of me generally, not just Morris, but others who've been contacting me privately, and I'm so grateful for their support.
Kevin Myers, thank you so much indeed for coming to the studio.
Thank you, Sean.